Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Dean Rogers. Welcome back to the Dean Rogers Show. Today, we've got an incredible guest, Mr. Chris Naugle. What's up, Chris?
Hey, man. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, I'm stoked to get into your story. We got some similar backgrounds. You were a pro snowboarder, which is pretty dope. And guys, if you don't know Chris, so Chris has dedicated his life to being America's #1 money mentor. And I think this topic of understanding how to use your money is so important because it's arguably one of the biggest gaps of knowledge for Americans is just not knowing how to use your money the right way. So Chris has built and owned 16 companies. He's been featured in Forbes, ABC, House Hunters, HGTV with a pilot show, and the founder of the Money School. So that teaches you how to be your own bank, and the Private Money Club, which is basically the dating site for private money lenders and borrowers. So lots of good stuff to get in there. Can't wait to unpack that for all the listeners. You guys can always connect with Chris at the Chris Naugle on Instagram. Good place to connect with him there. And then we got some good questions to dive into. So, dude, take us back to the good old days. We were talking before the show. You had some flashback memories recently. What was life like back then?
It was honestly, it was like living a dream because that's exactly what it was. As a kid, I didn't grow up with much. My mom raised me, and I remember I got this idea. I fell in love with snowboarding. I was always a skateboard kid. And I got this idea. I wanted to be a pro snowboarder, watching the videos. And when I tell people this, whether it's in school, teachers, parents, they're like, okay, yeah, keep dreaming, kind of like keep dreaming, kid. Yeah. And I'll never forget, I was dead set to make this happen, but I was starting to believe some of the nonsense I was being told that maybe it couldn't happen if I lived here and I couldn't just leave mom. And I remember I had got wind that there was these two pro riders that were originally from Buffalo. They moved to California, Blair and Shane, that were going to do this photo shoot at Kissing Bridge, my local resort. So of course I made sure I was there, and I just did hot laps behind them. And then I remember Blair invited me over because nobody else was in the resort. It was just during the day on a work day. And he said, hey, take some runs with us, and got talking. And, I told him, I can't, I want to do what you guys do. And he just said, then do it. At that point, it was crystallized in my mind. It was always a dream, but then at that point, it was like, I'm going to do this. And the rest of this history, I did it. And there hasn't been many pro riders that came out of this area. I'd say probably a handful at best. Blair, Shane, and there's a couple others. And I'm honored to say that I was one of them. And I still was able to maintain, living in Buffalo, even though I traveled all over the world for snowboarding. But yeah, dude, it was kind of like, any other athlete. It was the dream that you actually freaking wake up and live.
I love that message. Then do it. I think that's
what he said to me. He's just like, then do it. And you'd have to understand Blair. Blair and I have become friends, and it was just kind of like, that's just his character. He's just like, well, why wouldn't you just do it?
Yeah. I think that's one of the things that just hold people back, right? The good old Nike, just do it. Most people, they come up with all these different excuses as to why they can't. So, and it sounds like based on your location, history of the area, maybe the odds were against you, right? But you went for it and got to live out the dream. So how do you go from pro snowboarder to America's #1 money mentor? How does that transition happen?
Well, it's not exactly just like a pivot, right? It's kind of like, It all happened. Well, so there's a lot more to the story, but I'm just going to hit it real quick. When I decided I wanted to be a snowboarder, I was around 16 years old, and at 16, most 16-year-olds, like back then, you get a job. So I had a job, and I always worked on a farm for my friend Jack's dad's farm. But at 16, I got a job at a restaurant, and the owner of the restaurant treated me so badly that literally just one day I just couldn't handle it anymore. I was literally depressed from this job that I quit, but I wasn't a quitter. So when I came home to mom, I thought about this, and I had this idea, Mom, I'm going to start a clothing line in the basement. It's going to be a skateboard, snowboard clothing line. I'm going to print shirts with my art teacher. His name was Mr. Mahalski after school. And I'm just going to do that. And that's how I'm going to make money. And I thought my mom was going to shoot it down. She's like, that's an awesome idea. So I did it. I remember got a credit card from a credit union for $500, bought t-shirts, printed them with Mr. Mahalski and sold them out of my backpack. And then as my friends saw me doing this, I'd have them draw up some designs. We'd make a shirt kind of like almost like an artist rendition shirt of theirs. Then they would sell them out of their backpack and then they'd get free shirts to wear. And that's how I created like that first business. And it was just a DBA, but then I was selling my clothes. Like as I'd travel across the East Coast to snowboard contests, I'd stop at local shops and I would sell my clothes to them. I'd just pitch my clothes. And as I started seeing these shop owners and the lifestyle they had, I'm like, dude, I got to have my own shop. So this would have been 1993, dating myself a bit. But I got the idea. I wanted to open a snowboard shop and it was going to be called Fat Man because my clothing line was Fat Clothing Company. So Fat and I was the man. And you all know it was PHAT, just to quantify and clarify that. But that's where like my dream was I had my shops. I was a pro snowboarder and everything was going perfectly until the early 2000s when the first recession that I'd ever witnessed in my life or that I realized I witnessed was the dot-com crash. And when that hit, my retail stores came tumbling down. I could barely pay the bills. Things got really rough. And I literally came to the conclusion, I got to get a job again. Now, from 16 right up to this point, I'd never, I was in my early 20s. I hadn't had a job, true job. So when I put my resume out, it fit on one page and I got no action. Little Caesars even denied to hire me for a delivery driver. And the only companies that called me was Wall Street firms. Now, only thing I'd ever known of Wall Street was the movie Wall Street with Michael Douglas. And I'm like, woof, wearing suits every day. But I went on that interview because I had no other options and put the first suit of my life on. And that was my entry into Wall Street. 2003, I started in Wall Street. It was just a crazy thing, man. It was so crazy that like I had to trick my mind. So folks, I don't know if your listeners are going to understand this, but when you're a pro athlete, you have a mindset of just creating everything. Every athlete has this. An athlete goes out and creates their destiny. You just want to be the best. That's it. And you just create that and nobody else stops you. You just do it. So then all of a sudden I go into this Wall Street world where everything fits in a little box and you do what they say, including wear a gray, black, or blue suit every single day. I had an issue with this. I didn't have an issue because they wanted me to wear a suit. I had an issue because it just didn't fit who I was at a core. It'd almost be like, you put the cape on, but you don't feel like you deserve the cape. And I had to actually, this is going to be weird, but there's this company called Volcom. Volcom back in the day, I sold them in my stores and they actually made suits for their athletes. I knew the team manager. So I ended up I scored a couple suits, gray one and a black one. So I would go into the office, in my Wall Street job, my advisory job, wearing Volcom suits because it tricked my mind. It was okay that I had a suit on because it was a Volcom suit. Like, anyway, so that was my entry into Wall Street. And I served 16 years as a high level financial advisor. I did a lot of really awesome stuff, but also a lot of shit that just wasn't good. Wall Street breeds greed, as you've seen from the movies, and it also breeds an ego because a financial advisor, especially one that does it for a long time, you start thinking you know everything there is to know. And Will Rogers has a quote where he says, the biggest problem in America is not what people don't know. Remember that. It's not what you don't know. He says, the problem is what you think you know that just ain't so. Well, that was me. My ego got in the way for me wanting to learn new things. So like what I think we're going to go into with being your own bank, like I'd heard about it. I had people tell me about it or hint to it, clients, and I failed to want to recognize it. I just didn't even want to hear it. I just dismissed it because I'm the advisor. I got the ego. I know what I don't know. And so I should have been on this path I'm on now, man, way earlier. But my ego got in the way. And I'm sure this is what stops a lot of people. They think they know what they don't know. And they fail to want to learn the thing that will change their entire life, their family's life. And that stopped me. But luckily, I actually ended up making it onto the right side of the equation. And when I retired in 2018 from the Wall Street world, and there's a lot that happened in there. But when I retired from that, I went on to do what I do now, which is teach the truth about money and how money really works instead of fitting in a square box, telling my clients the only thing they can do is what we offer as an advisor, which are either commissionable or fee-based, type management products. And it was an eye-opening experience. And I could have never, ever got to where I am if it wasn't for a select couple people, some very wealthy individuals that literally showed me the path and helped me realize that what the wealthy do is very different than everything that I had done previously, even as an advisor.
Wow. That's powerful. I think one of the biggest nuggets you drop there, if the listeners didn't hear it, is if you stay thinking and doing the same thing, then you're going to miss out on potentially the biggest opportunity of your life. I'm such a firm believer of that, because the people that stay doing the same thing are the ones that typically get left in the dust. And you've constantly got to be looking and seeing and evaluating what's going on and being willing to listen, being willing to keep an open mind, because you mentioned that, and that is really insightful for you to share, that you were in that moment where you were ignoring it because you knew what was best, right? But coming to that realization and being shown the light really changed the game for you. So let's talk about that. So you go from being a Wall Street advisor. That's pretty nuts. That had to have been an insane ride, incredible, crazy, weird experience. Like everything about it was probably, for the movies. How do you transition? How do you transition to starting, the money school? How do you get into taking this newfound knowledge you have and making it into what you have?
So actually how it happened, there's a couple dynamics. In 2008, I almost went bankrupt. I was one of the top 3 advisors in the firm I was at, which is a big firm, 51 Madison in New York City, just to reference where they were located. I mean, they're a huge company. And, I had started developing a strip mall where I was going to take a dilapidated paint store and turn it into a 3-unit strip mall and move my retail store into it. Well, I didn't foresee 2008, as many people didn't, and it crushed me. I almost went bankrupt. Literally had to ask my girlfriend, who just moved into my house, to pay the mortgage and the utilities just so I could get through that time. She's my wife now, but I sometimes wonder how I got her to stick through that. So what ended up happening is, after the recession, I'm broke. Wall Street, wasn't exactly the place to be in during that. And my retail stores were suffering bad. I actually ended up selling the retail stores in 2010, and I sold that strip mall in 2014. But what had happened is something very unique during that period is I watched a few of my clients who barely had any money with me, but they were big real estate investors. And I had ignored them too, because I can't make any money in real estate as an advisor. So I keep doing your thing, guys, but let me manage some money. But I saw during the recession, these guys got wealthier. Everybody else is getting poorer, and these guys are getting wealthier. So I'm just like, what are you doing? Now, I got lucky. I had one of those guys came into the shop all the time and bought his kids' snowboard stuff there. So one day I just cornered him in the shop when he came in, and I just said, listen, I know you're in real estate, but what are you doing? And he literally just eloquently just laid it out to me. He said, here's what I'm doing. And this recession, he said, listen, I couldn't be where I'm at if this recession didn't happen. See, this recession happened, and I was able to, I'm buying things like cheaper than I've ever even thought I could dream of buying things. And I'm like, Warren Buffett said, buy low and sell high. And he literally described it all. And I'm like, dude, I got to get in the real estate game. So I had credit. I had a 401k. So I took loans for my 401k. I had life insurance policies, whole life policies that I took loans from. And I got into real estate, and I started buying apartment buildings, pennies in the dollar, in 2009. And I continued on this path till 2014, getting up to 36 units. Now, I was not doing it right. I don't want anyone to think like, oh, wow, you were crushing it. No, I was doing everything wrong. I was borrowing money from commercial banks. I was borrowing in my personal name, not the entity's name, because they said, oh, it's cheaper in a rate to do it in your name than it is a company. Oh, well, give me the cheap rate, not knowing what I was walking myself into. And I was also doing all the work myself. I was managing myself. I was doing a lot of the renovations. I'd work the Wall Street job, and then I would go to the buildings and I would work all weekend long. And, it was cool to see how I built it, but just as fast as I built it in 2014, it all crumbled because I built a portfolio on a house of cards, and that house of cards was banks, and the bank pulled my line of credit. And then eventually I got behind, and I just had to sell everything. So where the transition happened was right in what I just said. I got into real estate. I started to learn it, but then I failed at real estate. But then after I failed and I hit the lowest point in my life, so much happened. Sold all my cars, had to sell my bedroom set, had to sell my dream house that me and Larissa owned. And after that, we started flipping houses. And then I got the vision and the dream. I wanted a TV show. I just wanted to have a show on HGTV. And we began filming a pilot. Now I had filmers from the snowboard world that did this for me. His name was Kyle. He was phenomenal. And he actually filmed our entire HGTV show. But the only way I got out of Wall Street, man, was this. This was my ticket. I wouldn't have known it then, but this HGTV show. So when it got the green light and we were going to air, I had to go to my compliance officer in the Wall Street firm and tell her, because I needed to have what's called an OBA, an outside business activity. Now I had a bunch of them in the real estate companies. So when I went to her with this HGTV OBA, she said no. And she literally said to me, she said, Chris, you got to make a decision. Are you going to be a financial advisor? And she knew I was one of the top guys, or are you going to be a real estate investor? That was it. I literally right there drew the line in the sand. I said, you know what? I'm going to do the show. And I within, gosh, I don't know, probably longer, but let's just say within 6 months, I had sold my financial practice to another guy in my office, and I had left the Wall Street world forever to do this show. Little did I know, the show ended up getting canned because Discovery bought HGTV and said, no more new shows. So the lesson in this whole story is when one door closes, another one opens. So I'm at my house telling my wife we didn't get the HGTV show. Literally, I'm ready to drive my truck off a cliff because we burned the boats, man. I had no income. We were doing the flipping. HGTV, we had Lowe's who was going to sponsor us. We had all these things lined up, and all we needed was the green light for our show. And I got the call and they said, no, you're not moving on. We're not doing any new shows. And the universe is a weird thing. And depending on your faith, but I remember I got a call when I got home. It was Greg, the guy that had told me at a seminar many years prior. He said, the ultimate in real estate is being the bank. We had been doing some stuff, borrowing money. I was partners in a fund or two that he did. And he said to me, he said, I'm really excited about what we're doing. I can't wait to continue to build this. And this is right when I just heard HGTV wasn't taking us. And I literally thought it was a sympathy call, which pissed me off. So I'm like, Greg, who told you? And he's like, told me what? I'm like, you're calling me just to make me feel better because we didn't get the show. And he's like, oh, wow, I'm sorry, but I really didn't know that. And I was just calling to say I'm really excited. And actually, now that you bring that up, Chris, I know you're down in the dumps. I know that would have been cool, but I'm so happy that didn't happen, because I know other people that have gotten shows and they get sucked into the vortex of that world, and it never ends well, because you either go on to big stardom and then all of a sudden it crashes and burns, or you build everything up and then all of a sudden you make nothing. He said, now we can build this business and we can go out and do these things. And that's the door that opened. And that led me to where I am today. That was the start of Money School. Greg is a minority partner in Money School, and everything just blossomed from there, because now I had the permission slip to close that door of the show. And I had a new permission slip to go out and create what I really needed to be doing, which I wasn't aware of that at the time, because, sometimes you get tunnel vision, and then all of a sudden now the light opened up. And folks, listen, like, I'll tell you something, and you don't need to believe me, but someday you'll look back on this and you'll believe this. Success is so simple. Success, wealth, it's really simple. And it starts with one word. Earl Nightingale talked about this in The Strangest Secret in the World, is YouTube's thing in his book. And he said that the secret to success is creation. And the secret to failure is the opposite, and that is conformity. So everything, Dean, your life is not much different. Everything we've done has been to create. You create yourself into the pro snowboard. You create the tricks. You create that life. Then that ends. And then all of a sudden you create this new thing, and you're just constantly creating. But the problem with so many people is they stop creating because other people get in their ear, the mosquitoes, I like to call them. People start saying, oh, that's a dumb idea. Oh, that's a scam. That'll never work. And who are those people? The closest people to you, your closest friends, your family members, your parents, your spouse. Those are the people that tell you your dreams are no good, but they're doing it because they're trying to protect you. But really, they're trying to get you to conform to a world that they're comfortable with. And that world, and take this however you want, is a failure for you, because that's not what you were put on earth to do. You were put on earth to create whatever you want. But so many people stop 3 feet from goal because they conform to somebody's failed idea, somebody's failed reality, and somebody's failed financial journey. And that stops too many people, and it makes me sick to my stomach.
Woo. That's powerful right there. I think that is so true, that the people that typically hold you back are the people closest to you.
Always.
And I love what you said about creating. In moments of creation is where there's opportunity. if you're not creating, there is no opportunity. And man, you're getting me fired up thinking about it, because I'm thinking of all the moments and all the pivot points and all of the success. It's all focused around creation, all around creation. So I think that is so valuable for people. So you go from getting this newfound information, discovering what your path is. How do you take that information and create opportunities for other?
Yeah. So that was unique. And I still look back and I can't believe it happened this way. So I had learned from one of these wealthy real estate guys that was lending me money to do our flips. I had learned how he was lending me money. And I was at a meeting at Cheesecake Factory in Utah when I was pitching a deal to him that he was going to fund. And I just said to him, I was an advisor at the time. I said, so Mike, how do you lend all this money? And he, without even blinking, he says, I lend from my private banking system. I'm like, you son of a pup, you got yourself a bank? And he didn't have a bank. And he goes on to say, no, I don't have a bank. I created a banking system. I mimic what the banks do, but I do it with my own banking system. I'm like, well, tell me more. And he starts telling me all the things his banking system does. It's guaranteed growth. It gets dividends. It grows in a tax-free environment, which had me. And I'm, as an advisor, I'm listening to all this stuff and I'm like, okay, what could this be? Because I'm trying to make it fit the square box like I was trained to do, right? Everything in the financial world fits in a square box. I know all of them. And he's saying all these things, and some of the things just don't make any sense. Then he drops a bomb on me. And he says to me, I take money from my bank and I take a loan from it. And he always kept calling it his bank. He didn't tell me what the vehicle was. I take a loan from it and I give it to you. But you see, the money never leaves my bank, because the place where my money is, they give me a loan. And I pay an interest rate on that loan, but it's much, much lower than what I lend it to you. But my money never leaves. And this is where I had a hard time. And I'm like, wait a second. Is it a bank account? What is it? And he's like, no, my money still earns guaranteed interest and dividends, even though I just gave it all to you. So if I gave you all my money, he said, I'm still making interest and dividends. Yes, I got to pay interest on it, but the interest is lower than what I'm making, and my money's compounding. And he says this, and I didn't recognize it then. He says, my money never, ever sleeps. It never stops working for me. I didn't understand that then, but he was literally speaking of compound interest, uninterrupted compound interest. Then he said, I gave the money to you and you pay me interest. And then when your deal sells, you pay me all my money back and the cycle repeats. But I never stopped earning when I gave you the money. Actually, I made money twice on the same dollar. I'm like, boom. and then I'm like, you got to teach me how to do this. And he says, I can't. You got to call this guy Brent, who showed me how to do it. So I immediately called this guy Brent, and Brent said, you got to watch this 90-minute video. I was ticked. I'm like, I don't have 90 minutes. I'm an advisor. Like, just what is this? And he says, watch the 90-minute video. And I watched the video reluctantly. And I say this loosely, but it's the truth. That 90-minute video changed my life. Because after that, I knew what was possible, and I knew what I'd been missing the whole time. And it was right under my nose the entire time. I knew about it the entire time I was in Wall Street, but they never taught us this one little piece, which was the process. I knew what the vehicle was, but I never knew what the process was. And I didn't know the vehicle could even do this. So it opened a whole new reality. And then what I started doing is I literally took what Brent did, and it didn't happen naturally. My wife, we'd bring Brent out to speak to our RIA. We did a RIA where we'd have real estate investors, and Brent would come out and teach that 90-minute video to everybody. And I watched the audience just be like in awe, just like I was when I watched it. And then all of a sudden, my wife was like, Chris, you have to help him. And I'm like, what? I'm doing this and this. I got all this stuff going on. She's like, no, you have to do what he does. You're a good speaker. You can go on the road. You could speak. Look at how tired he is. He can't do this. You can help him. So she was talking about giving. And at that time, I was still had that ego, right? So I'm like, no, I want to do this, and I'm creating this. And we're out to dinner with Brent after he did this presentation. And she's waiting for me to tell him, hey, Brent, I want to help you do this. What would that look like? And I didn't. And she kicks me under the table. Brent sees this and he's like, you okay? Like, is there something wrong? And she's like, tell him, Chris. And I'm like, now I got to tell you. So that's where it all began. And he took me under his wing and he mentored me and he showed me everything. And we started by me going out on the road and speaking in front of audiences. It was tough in the beginning. I had to memorize this presentation. I had to go out on the road and do something I hadn't really done a lot of. And that's where we began. And that was going great. And then the pandemic hit, and we were in Walt Disney doing an event, and they shut the whole country down. to shut the world down, really. Well, I'll remember that. It wasn't that long ago. And all of a sudden now I had to pivot. Now I had been doing Facebook Lives every Sunday. I called them Sunday Flip Fun Day. And I was doing them and I had a nice audience. So all of a sudden I'm like, grab the cameras, grab the iPads, and let's just do a live. And I did a live and I said, hey, everything we've been doing live, I'm going to do virtually. I'd been reading Russell Branson's books. Screw those up. And he was selling potato guns on a webinar that he did every week. I said, we're going to start doing a webinar every week with this 90-minute presentation. And then I did. And literally that was back. Well, that would have been 2020. I've not stopped. I've not missed one Wednesday at 1 p.m. We do a wealth webinar every single week. And that's where it began. And then I started doing another webinar, and then I started doing YouTube, and I started doing videos on Instagram. And, every little component just was an add-on to what I was doing. And then all of a sudden I kind of opened my eyes one day and I'm like, holy cow, I have almost 1 million followers. And this is now where the majority of my business is. I still go out and speak at key events, but like I was busting my butt speaking at 60 events a year, getting leads, and then having, 30% of the leads actually take my call when everything that I needed was right in front of me. And we were talking about the studios. All I needed to do is create studios, get a camera, get a crew that can edit. And all of a sudden now I don't need to be on the road. I don't need to be away from my daughter and my family. I can be right here doing what I'm doing, teaching people the biggest secrets of the world when it comes to building wealth. And it just catapulted me.
I love that. So you took what most people saw as an obstacle and you created another opportunity. And
obstacle's always the way, man.
That's right. I had a similar experience during all the world shutting down. And I found a way to go online and connect with other people and create opportunities for us to work together and to win together. And so it sounds like you did the same thing. So that's powerful.
Yeah, it's weird.
So tell me about being your own bank.
Yeah. So
pull the curtain back. Tell us this secret. Tell us how we can unlock this power and bring it into our own life.
Dude, it's so easy. And everybody wants me to get to this, like at the beginning of the podcast. And I'm like, it's so simple. I can do it in like 5 minutes or less.
Right.
We've been taught to go out through our entire lives. We've been taught lies about money. My whole life up until I learned this, I taught a lie. And that was to go out and trade your hours for dollars, which your hours are priceless, but we put a dollar value to them. And then we take the money that we make, and unbeknownst to us, or not even, it's almost like a subconscious level, we take that money and we give it away. Now, I know you're thinking, no, I don't give my money away. Sure you do. You give up control of it every single day you put money in the bank. And then what else do? You give up control of it when you put it in a 401k. You give up control of it where you put it in with an advisor like I used to be. We've been taught and conditioned that we are not smart enough to be a good steward of our money. So what Be Your Own Bank is, it's a concept. It's a process called the infinite banking concept. And I didn't create this. I want to be clear. Nelson Nash pioneered the name and the process, but he didn't create it either. This has been being done for hundreds of years. I've got videos that trace it back over 200 years old. Families, the wealthiest families in history, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Morgan Stanleys, up to the sitting president, they all use this. But yet we are never taught this, because I'll tell you why we're not taught this. You're not taught this. I didn't learn this as an advisor because there's no money in it in the traditional sense. And I'll explain that in a moment. So let me explain this to you. What if I told you that if you wanted to change your entire financial situation, today and years in the future, it involves changing one thing. Could everybody listening change one thing? And that one change is where your money goes first. So instead of giving up control, putting your savings in a bank, putting it in a 401k, you take your savings and you change where it goes first. And we put it into this account, this machine, because that's what I'm going to call it. And I'll tell you what it is. Same machine Mike was using that I was mentioning: guaranteed interest, dividends, tax-free, uninterrupted compound interest, and so on. So we put it over there. But see, we don't ever want to leave our money sitting. That's the other lie. We've been taught to give up control of our money and just leave it sit, because that's the only way you can grow, until you learn that you can still have your money work for you even when you take it out. So then the goal is, when you put your money in this machine, the goal is to figure out where can that money go immediately in the next 30 days to make more money. Hi, Vivi. 1 second. So that was my 3-year-old. So now let's just pick on one thing, and then I'll move it on. Let's just say credit cards. Most people in this country have credit cards. And right now the average interest rate on a credit card is 20%. So what if I told you I could show you how to earn a 20% guaranteed return on your money. You'd want to know, right?
Mm-hmm.
Perfect. Let's take that money that we changed where it went. We put it into this machine where it's going to earn uninterrupted compound interest at a guaranteed interest rate. And let's take that money out. We're going to take a loan from that account. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pay off one of your credit cards. We'll start with the lowest balance first. So let's say we pay off Visa. I'm just going to use it, call it $1,000. And folks, for those of you listening, I'm doing this as a circle with a $100 bill. Just imagine a circle. The money started on the left in that magic account. It's not magic at all. It's actually pretty stupid. And it moves over to the right, which is where the opportunity is, in this case, a Visa. Okay, so we pay Visa off. Now, let's just assume you were paying Visa $100 every single month, which was just the interest at 20%. So when Visa's done, all I want you to do is I want you to continue making that $100 payment, but you're going to change the name on the check, and the name on the check is going to be your name. So we'll write Chris Naugle. So I paid Visa off. I no longer owe them any money, and I'm going to pay the same $100 I gave them, which was 20% interest, and I'm going to put that money back around the bottom part of the circle back into that account where it came from. Because remember, I took a loan from that account. So I'm going to just put it back and I'm going to repay that loan. How much money did I make there? So those of you listening, you're probably thinking, well, I don't know. You didn't give me enough info, but I know you paid yourself back the 20% you used to give away. So most people would say you made 20%. Great. But what if I told you you made money twice? Because that account that you took the original money out of, the loan to pay Visa off, that money never stopped earning interest. So if it was $1,000, that 1,000 earned interest and dividends while you paid Visa off, and the entire time you were paying it back. So you made money twice. How do banks make money? They make a spread. They pay you 1 to 3%. They charge you 5 to 8%. In the middle is the magic word, the spread. So in this case, now let me tell you what that magic machine is that pays guaranteed interest, dividends, tax-free, and uninterrupted compound interest. It's a thing you've known about your whole life called whole life insurance. But it's not just a whole life insurance. It's a specially designed and engineered whole life from a mutually owned company that pays dividends. Now, all everybody heard there was whole life insurance. And they don't want to hear anymore. But right before I said whole life, you were frothing at the mouth. You were literally trying to keep the saliva in because you were just like, I need that. Then I tell you what it is, and you're like, oh, I don't want that. Yes, you do. You just don't know that it can do what it can do. And you don't know that the wealthiest families have figured this out hundreds of years ago before you even were born. See, folks, the whole idea here is the spread. The insurance company pays you interest and dividends. There's not every insurance company, and it's not in a normal whole life. So be very clear about that. It's got to be designed to do this. So the insurance company pays you interest and dividends on the money. Let's just call it 5.5%. And right now, by today, it's August 31st, I believe, 2023, they charge us 5% to take the money out. So if I'm making 5.5 and I'm taking a loan out, I'm paying 5 and making 5.5. So some of you are still confused. How can you still get paid interest on the money even though you take it out? I said it's a loan. I didn't tell you where the loan came from. You see, a whole life insurance promises two things: a guaranteed interest rate and a death benefit. All they're doing is they're giving you your death benefit early. That $1,000 loan, it was $1,000 from your death benefit that they let you use while you're living. Oh yeah, they let you do that. So your money never stopped earning interest. So therefore, your money's compounding at a higher rate than what they're charging you, simple interest on the loan. So you're making a spread. And every single year that goes by in your life, whether you work harder, longer, or take on any more risk, your spread goes up mathematically, because compound interest is a magical thing that next year you have more because you're compounding on the interest that you made the prior year, and on and on and on. And it just builds and it goes rapid. And so now, once you pay off all your debts, because the fastest way to wealth is through your own debts and expenses, let's play real estate. So I lend a lot of money. That's just one of the things I do. So now let's say I got $100,000 in my policies, and I don't know, Dean, I don't know, let's just pick on you. You need $100,000 and you're willing to pay me 12%. I'm more than happy to lend you $100,000 because I just got it sit in my policy, which I don't want it in the policy. And you're willing to pay me 12%. So I take a loan from the insurance company, which they give me $100,000 in my death benefit, collateralized by my cash value. I give Dean the $100,000. So Dean's got $100,000 to go make money in real estate or whatever he wants to do. Dean secures my $100,000 with a first position lien on the property. Okay. We'll just play property for now. Could be a car, could be equipment. It doesn't matter. And Dean every month pays me 12% interest. So I get a check. Where do you think I put that check, Dean? Where do you think that 12% interest check you give me every month goes? Is it going to go back in somebody else's bank?
Nope.
Nope. It's going to go back over into my private banking system, which just happens to be a specially designed whole life. So every month that you pay me the interest, I'm putting it back in the policy as a loan repayment, which is reducing the loan balance against the death benefit, which is reducing the interest I'm paying while the insurance company continues to pay me more and more. If all of you listening haven't just had an aha moment, then there's something wrong with you, or maybe just you got to rewind a little bit because I went fast because I'm trying to condense time. I just gave you one of the biggest secrets that you will never learn from anybody else, because advisors would have to take a 60 to 90% pay cut to do this for you with a whole life. So they typically won't. And you now know how to do it. Now all you need is somebody that can show you the path and teach you the process. This also works. Like, everybody loves cars. I'm a big car guy. Like, I get all the money back for every single car that I ever buy, drive, and own by just changing where my money goes first and applying that process of my money moving around that circle. It can't happen any other way. I get every penny back for every car, no matter what I pay for the car. That's it, man. That's BYOB. That's being your own bank.
So clearly, there's probably some listeners where their minds exploded. They're picking up the pieces right now, trying to put it back together. You're right. So many people, I'm sure, have heard of whole life insurance policies, and for one reason or not, maybe turned off by them. But if you're using it the right way, set up the right way, then you can do so much more. So tell us, what are the things you can do with the money that you have access to from that whole life insurance? Are there limits? Are there no limits? Like, what can I do with that money? Do I not have access to my money? Is it limited to certain types of investments? Or, can I go buy, groceries with that money? What can I do with that money?
Yeah, so there's no limits at all. I mean, it's a pool of money that you build. The insurance company will never ask you what you're taking the money from. Now, your bank will. If you put 100 grand in the bank and tomorrow go to try to take your 100 grand back, they're like, what do you need it for? What are you doing with this money? Is it any of your business? The insurance company doesn't care. It's a money-making proposition for the insurance company because they're charging interest on it. They're just happen to be paying you interest. So the only restrictions are, so when we build these policies, so a lot of people, when they buy life insurance, they're buying a death benefit. We're not doing a death benefit here. We're putting the lowest death benefit on, shoving the most amount of money in. So how the conversation always starts is, how much money are you saving now? Let's just take somebody that saves 10 grand a year. Okay. I'm saving 10 grand a year or $1,000 a month. Let's use 1,000 a month. Great. Let's change where that $1,000 a month goes first. Let's put it into this specially designed whole life. Most people would say, well, how quick can I get my money out once I put it in there? The answer is immediately in the first 30 days. Now, that's only if the policy is designed properly. A normal off the shelf whole life that your broke ass brother-in-law tries selling you, you won't have any cash value for probably 2 to 3 years. So again, trying to explain, these are not normal. They're designed to do this. They're specially designed to work this way. So, but immediately in the first 30 days, you will have access to not all of your cash in the first year, but it's going to be anywhere between, I'd say lowest, and the way we design them, 75% immediately to as much as probably just under 90% immediately. So this wouldn't work for somebody that puts money into it and immediately wants to take all their money out. It's just not going to work. All your money that you put in, you're going to have access to more than what you put in, usually after the third year. So if I put 10 grand in the third year, I'm going to be able to take out more than 10 grand. The next year I put 10 grand in, it's going to be more than it was the year before. The beauty is every year that goes on, because of compound interest, the money you put in, you're going to get more out than what you put in. Mathematically, it's certainty. It's no risk at all. And the other thing too that's important to understand is you're only restricted for how much you can put into this by the amount you start, or the amount you say you want to start with. If someone says, I want to build a policy for 10 grand, guess what the most you can put in? 10 grand in. There's IRS rules we have to build it under called the Max 7 pay. Don't get technical with that. That's for us to worry about when we design it. But if you build it to hold 10 grand, 10 grand is the most you can put in. You can't next year say, oh, I love this. I want to put 20 in. No, we're going to have to start branch office number 2, a second policy. But if somebody has a hard time and their income drops and they can't put 10 grand in, no problem. We can reduce the amount you save and the amount you deposit by anywhere between 60 and 90% from what you start with. So low side, $1,000 a year to, $4,000 a year, depending on the design. So there's lots of flexibility down, but up you're going to build a plan to hold what you want the ability to save. And then if you want to put more in later, you do another policy. I'm just getting approved now for my 10th policy.
Okay. So that's another question. Is it something that you just have the one policy and you go all in and plan accordingly? Or is it something where it makes sense to have multiple? It sounds like having more than one.
Yeah, but don't let's back up. So you would only want one to start. More is not better. Matter of fact, more costs you more policy service fees, which are $50 a year. So you don't want more than one. But here's what happens. As you start doing this, like I just described, you're going to make more money every year. It's almost impossible not to. And if you're doing what you're doing in your career, your job, your business, you're going to make more money too. And over time, you're going to want to have the ability, you're going to want to save more money. And if you really want to save more money in the policy, then just by sheer nature of building a banking system, you're going to have to open more policies. Think of a bank, right? A traditional bank. How many times have you seen a traditional bank with just one branch office? No, dude, you drive down the street 2 blocks, there's another office. Go to the right and go 2 blocks, there's another office. Banks have multiple offices. The same thing. You will have multiple branch offices of your banking system. You got to think like a bank. And you also can't steal from your bank. So if you take a loan from your policy and you steal that money and you don't put it back into your policy, you're only hurting yourself. The insurance company doesn't care, but you're stealing from your bank, and nobody should steal from their business or let alone their bank. So it's literally like there's more to it. And I'm just giving them a 50,000 foot version. I mean, if they want to learn the whole thing, they can watch the 90-minute video on my website, and it'll really walk them through it and teach them how to get all the money back for every car they've ever bought, driven, or will buy, drive, and own, and how to eliminate debt in record time.
Yeah. Well, you got me certainly excited to dive more into it.
Wild. You can tell I get excited. And I do this, dude. I do this every day. And every day when I tell that, I'm pumped because it's just so awesome. And I know what it's done for my life, and I know what it can do for everybody's life. But they got to get over the hurdle of thinking they know what they don't know.
Yeah, that's magical. When you can find something you're so passionate about that you can continue to be excited. That's what real estate is for me. So, dude, Chris, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on. You've definitely dropped a ton of knowledge. Again, people still probably picking up pieces of their brain off the ground right now, putting it back together. Where can people go to find out more? How can people find out more information? How can they get connected with you if they're interested in taking action on something like this?
It's so easy. You just go to my website, and once you're there, it's chrisnaugle.com, Naugle, and just right when it comes up, a 90-minute video come up, watch the video. And when you're done watching it, book a call with my team, and we'll go through your circumstances and see if this works for you. And some people just like doing the deep dive. Great. Go to my YouTube channel at the Chris Naugle. There's, I think, 900 videos. Just do the ones with infinite banking or BYOB and just dive as deep as you want. I make new content and we put it up every single day. Instagram, if you like the short stuff, TikTok, if you like the short stuff. And I do a webinar every week, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. You can register for on my website there. It costs you nothing. And when you register, you get all 3 books that I've written: Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery, Private Money Guide, and a book, How to Get All the Money Back for Every Car You Buy, Drive, and Own. And there's no cost for the webinar.
Wow. Guys, if that's not insane value right there, I don't know what is. So, dude, thanks for coming on, dropping so much knowledge, being such a great resource. Guys, make sure you connect with Chris, chrisnaugle.com. Any famous last words?
Stop listening to other people tell you what your life should look like. Create your own destiny, the one that you were put on earth to do.
Let's go. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening. Until next time, peace.